This is 2 Minutes About Time with Luke Allen and Robert E.G. Black, the podcast that takes a look at the film About Time 2 minutes at a time. I am Richard Curtis, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you don't, well, you can just travel back in time 2 minutes and listen to something else.
I'm one of your hosts, Luke Allen, joined as always with my co-host, Robert E.G. Black.
Hello.
And our special guest for this week, Piotr.
Evening, hiya.
So today we're looking at minute 30 of About Time, and then we've got our other minute that we go to, which we'll talk about as that comes up. So minute 30 starts with the line, "I've lived many weary years," which Tim then says, "It's brilliant, but never in that long catalogue of wasted time have I ever seen such an atrocious miscarriage of justice. Do the prosecution have anything final to add?" And that's the only dialogue in this minute, which just surprised me, to be honest, because I remember this whole thing taking place being a lot quicker than it is.
What do you mean, lot quicker?
Like the whole scene happening and the actor getting the dry and all of that. Like I just thought that this whole thing would happen like within a minute, near enough.
Yeah, but I'd say what I love about all this is just the setup, because quite clearly when I watched it, I'd forgotten this sequence if I had seen it a long time ago. And
yeah, you think Tim's already fixed it.
Red herring, isn't it? Because you absolutely think it's Richard. It's got to be him. It's the casting. It's Richard Griffiths. It's got to be him. Great exchange. As you said, Robert, he looks at the script, so he's done the job, hasn't he? And there it is. And everybody's happy. And then it whips across to Richard E. Grant. And it's not right. And, it's that classic kind of, side swipe. You think it's all over, and it isn't. And it's great. I mean, you play it on his satisfaction. He's sitting next to him. Quite clearly, Harry doesn't know what's going to happen, but we know what's going to happen. Tim knows what's going to be. He's so happy that he's fixed it, And then, that the payoff then is fantastic.
And I think none of the audience are actually thinking about the fact that this has just undone his date with Mary.
I thought of that. We might have talked to him in his dressing room because he was going to do that earlier. And then still go to the restaurant.
Not at all. Again, if they did, then, well, they're better than me, because I didn't see it coming. But that's the writing and the directing. These are all things that you're in the moment, just like he's in the moment. This is, again, as we've been saying, from his point of view, from Tim's point of view, so we're with Tim. So we shouldn't be aware of all these other things happening. We should, otherwise we're telling the story wrong. We're telling the punchline before the gag.
Mm. Yeah, and I think sort of, just looking back at what we said earlier about the extra, she's still doing it a tiny bit at this point.
Now you see that you can't unsee it. That's the problem.
I like the fact that we, as you said earlier, that we get to see the soldiers' reaction, and we see all of the actors, really. And the handheld camera movements, and the quick pan over to Richard E. Grant. It feels like we're watching through Tim's eyes, almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that, and that is a... that's a directorial decision. All, as we say, the whole film is through Tim's. We're with Tim in this film. We want to feel what he's feeling. We want to kind of, he's doing it for us. We're going back in time with him. We're agreeing or disagreeing with his decisions. We're seeing how it plays out. And, we're hopefully feeling happy when he's happy and obviously feeling disappointed when he's disappointed. He's going through this whole roller coaster of emotions, and that's the point of this film, isn't it? Which is the point of any rom-com. He's got to get it, lose it, and try and get it back, and hopefully there's a happy ending.
To me, and I'm trying to make sure this sounds like the compliment it truly is, all the camera work feels almost camcorder-esque. You each see, obviously it's much more HD than you'd get with your average camcorder, and the colours and everything are all great. But it almost does sort of feel as though there's just someone there who's just sort of filming it casually, and it gives you that sort of fly-on-a-wall experience, which I think is better. And it's most clear at the end when he goes back in time to see his dad for the last time, and you got that shot of the stairs and everything. And I like that. It feels so personal, like you're watching someone's home video.
Yeah, and it goes back to when he first goes into the dressing room, Richard Griffith's dressing room. He goes in, and then the camera kind of handheld follows him in as if we've gone in the room with him. And it kind of reveals Richard Griffiths, and it doesn't make a big play of, here's a famous actor. Same with Richard E. Grant. It's kind of messy. He's introduced by this kind of messy whip pan, and we're not expecting it. And we're kind of expecting the thing to be all
Just
over and
there.
everyone's happy, and the whip hand kind of whips over to, and the way the judge says, "Oh, and one final word." Oh, hang on, I thought that was the final word. Oh, it isn't. And, oh, hang on, this is Richard E. Grant. So it's catching us on the hoof, just in the way, almost like the camera's following the action, and it's not prepared for this bit, just in the same way we're not prepared for it.
I love that both celebrity cameos are in the same scene, because I feel like you wouldn't normally do that. Like, I feel like if you got the famous actors, you might want to sort of spread them out a bit in the film.
Or the other, yeah.
So the idea that he just goes, right, plonk them both in, and
but also
it does catch you off guard. It's sort of, you're just going over that's Richard Griffiths who was in this, and then, and you're thinking where you know Richard Griffiths already from, and you're thinking, oh. And if you're with someone, you might be, he was the guy in that, and then suddenly it's like, and there's Richard E. bloody Grant,
Yeah, it totally catches you on the hoof, which is the whole point of this whole sequence, that we think it's over and it's not. And that's how it's, I think, directed and how it, and it worked for me. I didn't see it coming, and it makes it all the funnier for it.
And I don't know both the actors well enough, but I assume they are stage actors as well as screen actors. They seem like the sort of actors who would.
I think the English tradition, most actors will do stage as well as TV. It's only really, I think, in America that actors go sort of straight into telly and don't do a lot of stage. But I think in England it's a theatrical tradition. I'd be very surprised, especially the likes of the older actors that haven't done stage or don't want to do stage. I mean, that's where you do all your dramatic training, is geared towards theatre rather than TV and film. I think Robert De Niro, I remember in an interview saying he was the one who said that, Robert, why don't you do theatre? And he says, because I'm a film actor. I do film acting. I don't do theatre. And that's, I think that's much more an American tradition. The British tradition is theatre.
I found it a big surprise, just in terms of theatre actors and stuff, that quite recently in London we had like John Malkovich down here doing a show, which is just awesome.
I don't think I'm doing them a disservice in America to say, they're not theatre actors or they couldn't handle theatre. I mean, it's just a different medium. That's the thing. So I'm sure, people were being a bit unkind, I think, saying, American actors are coming to do plays in the UK because they want to kind of, show that they're real actors, that unless you do theatre, you're not a true actor in some way, which is very unfair because it's a different way of performing. It's a different medium. So to say one is better or worse than the other, I mean, theatre is theatre. You're playing to the gallery. A film, TV, you raise an eyebrow and the camera's right there. It's a completely different way of performing. And you find that, I find that when you get theatre actors, if they've worked in television and film, they will obviously vary that performance. But if you get a theatre actor who hasn't done television and film, you'll find that performance is probably a bit big and you've got to calm it down because it's a bit stagey, or because they're obviously playing to the gallery and not playing to the camera that's 2 inches from their face,
There's a great moment with Harry, because when Tim leans over and says it's brilliant, Harry actually smiles.
Yeah.
Like, he appreciates that Tim likes it.
But he's hunched, and he's in the chair.
Right, he's not looking at the stage, he's looking down into later.
He can't bear to look, can he? He can't bear to look.
But he's smiling at a moment. And I love this stage. I love the set.
And actually, Piotr, I guess he does what you do as well. Like, Harry's in among the audience. He's not in the front row or anything. He's reading everyone's reactions, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he's hiding. He's trying to feel the room, absolutely. But it's absolute murder. I mean, it's just horrendous. He's sitting there wanting the whole thing to end, but obviously he wants it to end in a good way. He doesn't want it to end in a bad way. But he's sitting there, he's playing every line in his head. It's awful. It's awful to sit and, I think, watch your own stuff with an audience because you're willing them to like it. And as I say, you're trying to feel the room. Does it work? Does this line work? Have I got them? Are they bored? Did they laugh at the right place? Did they cry at the right place? Are they interested at all? Has half the audience left? All those things are happening to him, and he's just sunk in the chair. I love it because he's just really sunk down in the chair, where Tim is kind of upright and he's kind of all happy. It's all got to be all right, but Harry doesn't know that.
I will always remember, and I think I definitely mentioned it when we were doing the Godfather podcast, was that when we had the premiere for Unstable, I think it was a mistake me sitting in the front row, because it was, I mean, I can't imagine how painful it would be to be a feature, because that was the longest 20 minutes of my life, I think. Just sitting there and basically noticing that, like, two of the speakers were out of sync. No one else noticed. I turned to the person next to me. Do you notice? No, not really. But it was bugging me. There was an ever so slight echo between the two speakers and things like that. And so I was just sat there, unable to spot anyone's reaction, because it probably would seem completely unprofessional if I turned around to see what they were all doing. So thankfully, because it was a silent audience for the whole thing, so thankfully when the credits rolled and it got a good cheer, it was like, oh, phew. And
but up to that point, horrendous, wasn't it? I mean, it was just, as you say, longest 20 minutes. You can't see anything. You don't have people are bored, yawning, moving, wherever. If anything, it's the sound. If people are shuffling or coughing or sneezing, if there's noise, that's not a good sign. They're not focused. Definitely it's not a good sign if people are leaving to go to the toilet and come back. I mean, that's really bad.
Yeah, I think it's a relief with it being a short film that wasn't as much of a worry. But yeah, I think with a lot of that as well, like, I think with the case of that, a lot of the people who were there because of me. Like, there were those who were there for the actors and those who were just there for the entertainment. But I think, for the most part, people did come with the aim of supporting my film rather than with the aim of getting any entertainment themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but you know what? Everyone says that I'm here for you. I just, I don't care what it's like, I'm going to like it. Don't believe them. Everybody, if there's a film on, they're going to get into it, and if they don't like it, they're not going to like it. In a way, it's worse if it's people you know. If it's strangers, they don't like it, they just walk away, never see them again. If it's friends and family who don't like it, then that stays. Every time you see them and that subject comes up, that they don't like it. So
I realise it's awful when I know, I mean, you've probably both noticed, when I know that I'm talking to someone who has seen my film, I have a habit of bringing it up so much. Like, even though it is just a short film, and I realised that in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. It was such a big part of my life for like 9 months that if I know someone knows what I'm talking about, then I'm talking about it. So both of you feel free whenever to tell me to shut up when I've mentioned it too much. Because
no, we all do it because it is, like you
you've
say,
made two features. You can talk about them all you like.
Of course, it's a personal thing. It's more than the film. The film itself. When you show it, it's almost like when the film is done and you're showing it to people. That moment for you is over because the work is done. You're now sitting in the audience like Harry is with everyone else, hoping everyone likes it, but you can't stop it. You can't go back and fix it now. It's done. It's locked. It's done. It's there forever. And that in its own way is horrendous. But that aside, it's the journey you took. You wrote a script. You pulled people together. You got a producer. You made the thing. All of those things are life-changing individually. So put them all together. The fact that you actually made something at all. When lots of people talk about it and never get to that point. So you've already got that thing that you've made. You've made that chair. You've made that thing that represents you. So that's huge. So absolutely, you should never apologize again for what it means to you. It may not mean anything else to anybody else, and everyone could, will you stop talking about your film? But obviously, they don't understand what you went through and what it means to you. Only you understand that.
As a completely unrelated question, just because I don't think I get to ask this question to anyone much at all. Can you tell us, Piotr, about the experience of the BAFTAs? Because obviously you were nominated for an episode of Emmerdale. What was that whole thing like? Yeah,
it was a surprise. I mean, it was a nice surprise. I mean, the added kind of bonus was when I was nominated as part of the team as the director of that particular episode that was nominated for a BAFTA. One, obviously, it's a surprise. It's a very pleasant surprise. And two, they hadn't actually been nominated for about 6 years. So it was an added kind of bonus. So it was like they were really happy that it had been nominated. So when you go along with a television episode, you're part of a big team. There's less of me in that episode than there is in a feature film. In this particular one, though, there was probably a lot more of me in there because it was really long and we had to cut. It was about a 25-minute episode, and I cut almost 9 minutes out of it. So I had a very kind of overlong episode. So there was a lot of work went into it, so it was very satisfying. So I felt like, there's a reason why we were there. We had put a lot of work into it. It wasn't just a normal episode that goes out every week. There was a lot of work went into it. So yeah, I was proud of it. And obviously, yeah, what's to say? I mean, you're nominated, you dress up, you go to the show, and you hope you win. We didn't win on that night, but the whole experience was fantastic. But, it didn't make as much of an impression on me as I thought it would.
Okay. I mean, do you have, when you're a director on like a TV show and stuff, do you feel as almost like you're intruding a group of people who already know each other quite well with cast and crew, or is it often quite a comfortable position to take?
I thought that would be that way, because obviously if you're making a film, you're there from the beginning. You know more than everybody else. It's everybody's coming to you. A long-running show or a TV show that's already been set up, if you're not the lead director and you've come in and it's already been set up and it's running, everyone's cast, the sets are built, everyone's on board, you don't really choose the people you work with. So you come on and you do feel a little bit like, you're the new boy, and the whole thing is kind of running without you, if you like. Doesn't matter which director comes in. But that doesn't mean you can't bring anything to it. And what I found was, especially on the longer running ones, was especially the actors like the fact that you're new, because it's the one thing that changes. Everything else is the same, because they're working with the same people every day. And the only thing that really changes is the director. So when the director comes in, it's suddenly fresh again. Right, what's this director going to do? How are they going to see it? And they were very open to taking direction and really wanted to talk about stuff and just wanted you to add something. So that was really...
I do find it weird how TV shows change the director so much, considering how much of a big role the director has. I always do find it interesting how TV series, just have a director for a particular block rather than to do, the whole series. Obviously, with a soap, it's different, but with, when you had, Shakespeare Hathaway and stuff, it's interesting that you have, multiple directors on, and it's not just the same person's vision for the whole thing.
Yeah, but I mean, Shakespeare Hathaway, I was the lead director, so I kind of set that up. So I had a lot more involvement, and it was a lot more satisfying. But the other shows you come on, but the scripts are different. The world, you get to know the world, but that script is different. They haven't done that script before, so they're obviously there's a lot of, and if it's a good script, if it's an interesting script, then you're using all those tools. You're still having the same conversations about costume, about props, about production design. Obviously, you're choosing the locations with the location manager. There's still a lot of you in that show, just not as much as if you were doing a project, a one-off project like a feature. It's just varying degrees of influence that you have.
Is Shakespeare and Hathaway available in the States for people like Robert to watch, or is it only a UK thing at the moment?
It's on BritBox, the thing that's got...
Yeah,
which
so
I keep forgetting to see if
in
it's
the
free.
States then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how Shakespeare and Hathaway plays in the States. It's very
I haven't seen it all the way through, but I really enjoy what I've seen, and I've been meaning to watch it through, because it's a perfect balance between, the drama and the comedy. It's really well done.
Well, I'm glad you think so, because it was, other stuff like Father Brown is a world that kind of most people know, and it's not, it's based on reality, but it's the 50s, it's a world that we know. Shakespeare and Hathaway was a world that was created that absolutely doesn't exist. It's a Stratford that doesn't exist. We're trying to create this kind of Tudor Stratford that doesn't really exist in reality, and also this kind of quirky, it's all a little bit unreal, the whole thing. It's all a bit surreal, but in a fun way. We did create a world. We definitely created a world in Shakespeare and Hathaway, which is very different to the other shows that were done by that team.
To try and say this in the best way possible, it's like the sort of thing which you can watch in two minds. You can watch it as a turn your mind off and just relax and enjoy the comedy, or you can take it as being properly invested into the crimes they're solving. And so, yeah, I think it's great because it's not one of those things which you find too hard to follow if you got it on in the background, but it's also one of those things which you can appreciate more if you're watching it.
Yeah, and I think it's quite, it's colourful, it's visual, it's again that thing of...
And it's daytime TV, isn't it?
But I think I think the quality is kind of primetime quality. I think
I think it could have been primetime, 100%.
In Australia, I mean, it's for me, it's a classic kind of Sunday afternoon slot, like Heartbeat was, or something like that. It's one of those that I think the quality of every department is solid. And, it's one of those shows, again, you watch it and you want to see where they go. You want to see the locations, because locations I always look at it as every location I choose is a place that I want to go and see. and hopefully then photograph it. And obviously, so it's almost like a travelogue as well. Because, if you say it's set in Stratford.
And, when you watch a film like About Time, when you watch it and you go, I want to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be to where this was filmed. So I guess if you are, choosing locations in the mindset that you want people to actively search them out after watching it almost.
Yeah, look at About Time. These are ultimately houses, but they're all cool houses, aren't they? We want to go to that beach house that his family, where his family
which is rental for $2,000 for a weekend.
Even
final episode,
Harry's...
we get every guest host on to share the house for the weekend.
Harry's house as well. It's a classic kind of like Hollywood thing. You watch Hollywood movies and people are living in these fantastic places. It's like, how can they afford that? And you kind of have that with Harry. All right, he's a playwright, but he's got to be really. If he's not independently wealthy, then he's doing really well as a playwright, because that house is really expensive. But again, you don't care. But you don't want to go into a pokey little house.
Mary's flat is the only one which is small, and I like it for that. Like, it 100% feels real. Mary's flat.
Yeah.
And actually, it's possibly worth going back into the minute.
Going back to the minute, what I wanted to say, following off what Robert said, is with the extras and so on, it's the reactions for me. See how many times they cut to the crowd. This is where the extras are really important, because if they're not reacting properly, this scene doesn't work as well. Because all you've got is Richard E. Grant obviously drying, but the awkwardness comes from when we cut to the audience.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have those cuts to the audience and you're just looking at Richard E. Grant, your feeling wouldn't be the same. You wouldn't feel as awkward. You feel awkward because the audience feels awkward.
And you start with a lot of fast cuts and fast movements. Then he stands there, looks out, and you get Tim watching with a big grin on his face that slowly drops a smidge. Yeah. And then you have just got it's only like 5 seconds or so, but it's long enough to be uncomfortable, of him standing there and slowly realising that he doesn't remember a word of what he's supposed to say.
Yeah, and again, Richard E. Grant's got no lines, so he's got to do it all with that expression. And again, this is visual, this is filmmaking, isn't it? It's fantastic. But it's the combination of the two things. And as you say there, the fast cuts slow down as well. So it becomes, we're holding on him a little bit too long. We're going back to the audience. Nothing's happening. Oh, this is really awkward. And that works.
And I'm noticing, like, most of the extras look really serious. There's one extra just behind Tim who smiles for a while and then just at the end of the shot becomes more serious. And I love, the amount of detail, the reactions that you've got, some people whispering to each other at the back, and Harry looking very, very angry. Yeah. Like, considering how angry we've seen him throughout, I think the fact that he's silently angry makes it all the more, terrifying and tense.
Well, I think he's always somebody that kind of is hiding he's always putting on a front, isn't it? He's always like, he's under stress, like when Tim first arrives. Every scene that we see with Harry, he's under some kind of stress, and he's trying to hide it by kind of not joking about it, but by trying to calmly kind of explain what is going on. Mm-hmm. But you can tell that he's ready to kind of explode. But he's trying to hold it all in. And here as well. He's just sitting there and you just feel for him. But all these people are kind of all around him, thinking, what is happening here?
To flash forward, it's a beautiful shot at the very end of the minute, where Richard E. Grant just looks completely terrified. The background's blurred around him, and the camera's ever so slightly tilted up towards him. And I never noticed how sort of beautifully shot that one shot is.
And again, I think that's also great. Again, is this thing of every department. I think when everything works, you don't notice it. And like you say, if you now think about it, the camera work and the photography in the film, I think is great. But it serves the story. You don't stop there and go, oh, wonderful.
I've said that about soundtracks before. Where I've said the best film soundtracks are the ones you don't notice.
Well, you shouldn't notice.
Obviously they're not the most memorable film soundtracks, but the best soundtracks are the ones which just accompany the scene and no one notices at all.
Yeah, and I think the music, that's the thing. When music's used badly, that's when you notice it. When it's done well and it's actually helping the story, like, the cut to him in the gallery when it cuts to the Cure, I think that's a great, use of music there. I think it's obviously great when, we've talked about it already, when she walks away and that tune kicks in and basically the lyrics take over and they tell us what's kind of happening between the two of them. that's music is again another tool. It's when you can't use other things. If the music isn't adding anything, then why is it there? There's got to be a reason why you're putting it in there. It's not just a case of, we need some music here. And so the wrong song is, that can just ruin a movie.
Yeah, definitely. So have we got any other comments on this minute before we move to our other minute?
No, I think it's just that, again, the use of slightly looking up at him, it makes him look, bigger in the frame, it's a bit dramatic. You put the back out of focus, it isolates him on stage again. You're now also feeling what he's feeling, standing there on the stage completely drying. So you're getting that added bonus as well, because it's Richard E. Grant as well. So you kind of, I don't know, there's a subliminal, because he's a famous actor, that must work as well. If it was an unknown actor, you'd be you probably wouldn't feel it as much because it's Richard E. Grant. You think, but he can't dry, it's Richard E. Grant in the back of your head. Do you know what I mean?
So, I believe the bonus minute that I gave you this week was minute 19, which opens with a word that we don't say on the show, and it's followed by "Do you want?" and it's from Harry. And I'm remembering now, I did send this to you so we could re-look at our introduction to Harry and compare it to sort of how he is later on. So it appears past me was a lot more intelligent with this than currently.
Yeah, it's just a great introduction to a character, isn't it? Again, I didn't know particularly that he was in it. If I did know, I'd forgotten at this point. And he turns up, and it's all very casual. He's come to London. You're focused on the fact that he's coming to London. And again, he's all up, and he's happy. New life is starting. And then this is like the worst thing. The first thing that happens, he opens the door, and this guy comes at him in this mood. And oh God! And this is where he's going to be staying for, as we don't know how long. How awful. How awful.
So then Tim carries on. I'm James's son. Who? James Lake. What about him? You said you had a room. Go in there and wait. Quietly, I mean it. Don't make a sound, or I'll kill you. It's such an amazing introduction. I was actually having the first good idea I've had for a decade when you rang on the doorbell. But now it's gone. You little shit. How's your dad? Weird cock, I always thought. Something weird about him. Really? Yeah, never really liked him, actually. Your mum still looked like Andy Warhol. Well, he's got so many good lines in this minute. He's got all the best lines. This is why you like him. You hate him. He's awful and he's brilliant all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
he's horrible, but he's funny.
Like you said, they're all good lines. But can you imagine now, and it goes on, obviously, it goes on up into the room, but this is someone he's going to hang out with for God knows how long, and it's just...
The one person he can't escape.
Yeah. He thinks it's all new, and he's gone from this lovely house on the beach to this sort of pokey room in this house, and he doesn't know what's going to happen, and he's with this miserable guy who hates his dad. It doesn't start well, does it? But it's...
No, and once again, if Tim is the unreliable narrator at this point, maybe he's really not this bad. And this is just how Tim's remembering his first impression of him being. Robert, I remember we talked quite a bit about the weird cock I always thought line, and then your mum still looked like Andy Warhol.
Yeah. The Andy Warhol thing, yeah.
Apparently it was originally Churchill in the script, and they changed it to Andy Warhol. It's such a weird exchange, which makes it so brilliant.
Yeah. And again, what we said, the casting is perfect. Tom Hollander just absolutely makes it work. Again, he's got these lines to work with, and you know his character almost immediately. Just from the way he walks, just the way that, he brings him in, the way he just holds his rucksack. I love the way he just holds his rucksack and kind of pushes him into the house, into the room to stay in there. All those little things, they all show character. So you're introducing somebody very quickly.
The rucksack's like a child on a school trip, really, which I think makes him seem sort of more immature. So what are your overall thoughts on this minute as a whole?
I want to point out, revisiting this minute really quick, is that I'm pretty sure it's Richard Griffiths on one of the play posters on the wall.
It is, yeah.
So he's been in one of his plays before called Several Bodies.
Yeah. And again, it's nice. Watching the film again, I noticed that. And it's fun when you watch a movie again, because you see all those little things. It means nothing to you when you watch it the first time.
You don't know he's coming.
Yeah.
When you first see this.
You're not even looking at that poster because you're looking at him on the sofa in this place, and then suddenly the second time your eye's gone somewhere else. So that's just fun. I love stuff like that because that's.
I've looked at that minute on that moment on pause, and not twigged at all that that's Richard Griffiths. Like, it's a much younger Richard Griffiths as well,
Yeah.
isn't it? So it sort of suggests that Harry's been writing for him for a while.
Yeah, and again, that feeds, you watch it the second time, that feeds into the scene where Tim goes and talks to him, the fact that he's probably been working with Harry for so long. And if it is Richard Griffiths that he's talking about, and this is this actor that he's been working for so long, this is an actor who's let him down, maybe because, at that point,
it makes it even worse.
The line, it makes it even worse. It's somebody he's relying on, so, yeah, the rucksack thing, going back
maybe expresses why he's so offended with a friend of Harry's coming in and telling him to check the lines.
Oh, completely. Yeah, but I mean, who wouldn't be, a consummate actor like that, and you got a young guy coming in kind of saying, maybe you should check the lines. It's like, on any level, that's just wrong, isn't it? But the rucksack thing is great. He doesn't ask him to take it off. He doesn't say, I'll take your rucksack, I'll make yourself at home. He literally just, I don't care.
No, he's
sitting there.
He just grabs
don't move, because I'm focused on this thing. And he goes away, comes back, and then says, I thought I had it, it's gone. And then, he gives him the one. I just think it's just how, like you say, a minute, just a couple of lines, a little bit of blocking, and just a kind of a scene that you'll remember forever. It's great on every level.
I don't know how he succeeds so well, where so many other directors and writers seem to fail, in introducing an unlikable character in a way that you can still like him. Like, it's such a skill, which I think is so overlooked, that quite a lot of the characters which are characters you wouldn't typically like in a film, Richard Curtis makes work.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is casting. I think if you have the right actor doing it, because, they deliver it well. And there's that self-deprecation, I think, which is very kind of English as well. You take the piss out of other people, but you're also taking the piss out of yourself. It's like the Dad's Army thing, Dad's Army works because it's just, you're taking the piss not out of these characters, but just out of kind of English culture. So you're laughing at yourselves, and kind of Tom Hollander, the character is almost you're invited to kind of laugh at him and not take him particularly seriously, and you also then understand where he's coming from. That's also important because you do understand. Like we've said it, we understand that kind of that mental block that when you're focusing on something and someone breaks it, it's really annoying.
But I mean, in terms of unlikable character, like take a look at Bill Nighy as Billy Mack in Love Actually. Like, we like how he's such a horrible person. So, like, he does it well. I mean, credit to Bill Nighy as well, with, like, how well he can do likeable and unlikable.
But I think you touched on it, Luke. I think you said it when you said that these kind of characters say things and do things that you wish you could, but you would never do. And so you like the fact that they get away with it. And they got the kind of, they're brave enough to say it, or they just don't care. They don't care if they offend people, they're just in that moment. And it's quite kind of pure, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So, if you, Piotr, could go back in time to any point in your life and revisit or change or just relive any moment, what moment would that be?
Oh, this was quite it. At first, I thought it was really hard to think of something. Then it started, and it was just a flow. It started with the film. I'd go back and just, now when it's like doing the third take, the fourth take. I look at the film and I go, right, I'd do that differently, I'd do that differently, I'd do that. I'd want to tweak that a little bit. And this is the problem. And I think even if I went back in time 25 times and changed it, I would still come back to the same point and still want to go back and tweak something else. It's just, so I think that's the curse of it, because you just have to let it go. And I think someone said when we were editing, someone said, you never finish the film or you never finish a project, you just run out of time. And that's exactly how I felt, because I've still got a page on my computer of stuff that I'd like to fix. I just had to stop.
I did that with Unstable before we had the premiere, and it's an ever so slightly different version that's actually up on YouTube now. Like, I mean, the main difference is a piece of music. Like, my friend had written a song which was originally in the script. She didn't write it for the film, she wrote it, and I heard it, and I was like, this is perfect, can I use it? And we never got round to getting a good recording of the song before the premiere. And then I helped her with a music video, and we got a good recording of the song then. And then just for fun, I was like, you know what, I'll see what it'd be like if I edited that back in. And straight away, it was like, okay, I've got to use this version of the film next, because it fit like a glove. And so, yeah, and stuff like that. I think I fixed a couple of, like, continuity things, and bits and bobs. So I think it's enough that even with the change of music, people who've only seen the film once probably won't notice. But for me, it's quite a radical difference between the two. And I'd still want to do different things, so I can't imagine the pain of a feature film. And the fear of releasing it into the wild.
Yeah, I mean, you do. You kind of, when you get through it to the other end, you kind of go, what possessed you to put yourself through all this? But there's a perverse satisfaction in it as well that it's like anything, I suppose. It's like climbing a mountain or so. It's there and you try it and you get through it. It's a very personal thing. But I can't really explain why you put yourself through this kind of stress. I think it's a way of, I don't know, seeing how good you can be or pushing something. I don't know what it is. If someone could explain it to me, it's a mental problem, I think. But there's definitely a kind of, there's expression, and also there's a perfectionism to it. You're trying to create something perfect in an imperfect world. So this whole, and I totally relate to, I mean, everyone must relate to the girlfriend and, saying the wrong thing and wanting to go back in the room. And yeah, so I think, that's why it relates. I think that's why the film relates on so many levels, because you want to kind of perfect that thing you did wrong. So, and Girlfriends is the best example, because you sit and go, why did I say that? If I just went back in and said something else, maybe the outcome would be different. But that's why it's great that he sets up the Margot Robbie situation where every time he goes back, it doesn't fix it because it's not meant to be. Whereas this, when it is meant to be, it's very easy.
Okay. Have you got anything to promote to our listeners? Sorry.
Before we get to that, this week made me think of a moment I wanted to go back and fix again, because I did competitive speech in college, and there was this one event where in the final round, I forgot a single line of my speech. Froze, and in my head, it was probably just a few seconds, I don't know. In my head, it felt like forever, because I am going back, picturing the pages of the speech, reading through to that same spot to try to remember where I am. And it cost me winning. I was actually told later, yeah, you would have won if not for that blank. And I'm like, I came back the next year and won that event, which was fine. But I was thinking about it, I'm like, I'll go back and fix that. And I'm like, but then the other person doesn't get to win. And then suddenly I felt like a really good person. And I'm like, it's weird.
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe then I wouldn't come back the next year and do the other speech and win with that one. And I don't know, I'd like to be in that moment again, even if it goes just as badly.
Yeah, I think
maybe is the point.
That's it. Because I agree with you, what you're saying there about, even just replaying the moment and not changing anything is kind of good. Because I'd really like to go back and shoot the film now knowing that it came out all right.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change anything. I'd just go through the motions like he does, when
like he does later,
back. Yeah. And he says, I just enjoy the moment. I know what's coming, so I can just enjoy it. And that's not, but then it changes. That experience changes. There's something about that not knowing that creates the satisfaction at the end of it. If you knew you were going to win, you wouldn't try as hard, would you? Clearly.
Probably not, no. Because you would think you wouldn't have to.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've got to promote to our listeners, Piotr?
No, I just like them to watch my film. There's many people, when you spend 15 years on something, and you create something, especially as a filmmaker, you want people to see it, you want an audience. So, the nice thing about a film is that it exists forever and it's there and it's a story that can be told at any time and is relevant at any time. As we said, we can watch black and white films, we can watch old films, and they will tell you something different every time you watch them. And it's the same here. I kind of just feel that you want people to watch it and know how they react, even if they hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people can find The Last Witness, as we said in the first episode, on DVD and on Amazon and things like that.
Yeah, on Amazon Prime really and on iTunes and on DVD. And again, I'm very pleased that you liked it. Thank you.
Because you got, I can't remember the name of the guy who was your lead, but you've got Tallulah Riley and Michael Gambon. Like, it's an incredible cast.
Alex Pettyfer is the lead. Yeah. Tallulah Riley, Michael Gambon, and Robert Wienkiewicz, who is probably the best known actor in Poland in the cinema.
I've seen when you've shared stuff of the Polish copy of it, that he's the centre of the advertising in Poland.
Yeah, sense. I mean, he's a big actor in Poland. He's a very well known actor, and we were very lucky to get him. And he is the last witness. I mean, he plays the main character.
Once again, where can our listeners find you on social media?
So at Piotr Szkopiak, hashtag Piotr Szkopiak, the normal places. It's always my name. And on Facebook, that's where I normally update people on what's happening with The Last Witness.
And Robert, where can listeners find you?
Robert E.G. Black on social media, or go to lemmingdrops.com to find links to everything.
Listeners can find me on social media at Lava_Bottle0 on Twitter. They can find me on Instagram at The Ginger Luke, on Facebook at Luke Allen Film. They can find all my content, podcast appearances, radio, short films. Those words aren't in the right order, but you get the idea. Newspaper articles, things like that. Basically anything that I'm vaguely involved in is probably on my website at lukeallen.co.uk. This podcast is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 2 Mins About Time. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this episode. Robert, would you like to say goodbye to our listeners? Because I've run out of ways to say goodbye.
I'll say, wait, which one's which? We're leaving, so annyeonghi keseyo. Korean.
Very nice, very nice.
The 2 Minutes About Time theme is performed by Ethan O'Mahony and is a cover of the About Time theme, originally composed by Nick Laird-Close. 2 Minutes About Time is a production of Lemming Drop Studios in association with Bottle O Productions.